This podcast episode is proudly brought to you by my brand new online workshop, 5 Steps to Healing Your Child's Eczema Naturally, where I walk you through my 5-step naturopathic action plan to heal your child's eczema. Now, I've developed this after years and years of naturopathic practice and working with hundreds of families to improve and heal their children's eczema. We really focus on addressing the cause and eliminating your child's eczema once and for all. So to find out more about this workshop, head on over to naturalsuperkids.com/eczema, ECZEMA. So head on over to find out more and to sign up and get immediate access to this online workshop. Welcome to the Natural Super Kids podcast, where you will discover practical strategies to inspire you to boost the health and nutrition of your kids. I'm Jessica Donovan, a qualified naturopath specialising in kids' health, and I want to make it as easy as possible for you to raise healthy and happy kids. Let's get into it. In today's episode, we are talking about eczema. So let's get into this week's episode. So eczema is an inflammatory condition of the skin. But when we're looking at eczema naturopathically, and what I've found really works to, get on top of eczema long term is addressing the cause of that skin inflammation, which means that internal approach. So when we go to see a doctor for eczema, the most likely scenario is that we will leave the appointment with a prescription for a steroid cream. And steroid creams do work really well to address eczema on a short-term basis, but it's something that we need to keep using to keep the eczema under control. And that is because steroid creams address that skin inflammation topically. So they're reducing that inflammation in the skin right where it is needed. So they do work, but to get on top of eczema once and for all and to really address the underlying causes, we need to look deeper and take that internal approach. And generally, those triggers for inflammation will come from the gut and the immune system. So we're going to be delving into this further. So this is going to be a 2-part episode, two different episodes on eczema, because there is quite a lot to cover and I don't want to sort of overwhelm you. But in the second part, which we will do next week, we're going to really delve into some of the gut stuff that has to do with eczema. So I think we're all pretty aware that eczema is on the rise. Like, I remember as a kid, there was definitely eczema around, but it was, it was sort of fairly rare. These days, it's really common. In fact, 1 in 4 children will develop eczema by the age of 2. So it's a quarter of our kids are suffering with eczema. There's definitely, something going on there. And yes, eczema has a strong genetic component, but there's no doubt that our modern diet and lifestyle is playing a part as well. So whenever we're talking about genetics, I like to use the analogy of the loaded gun. So genetics, if we've got a genetic disposition to something, because of the way our genes are, or because of the genes that we have inherited, it is like having a loaded gun, but it is the way that we live and the food that we eat. It's our diet and our environment that pull the trigger to make that condition occur in a person. So just because you've got that genetic predisposition doesn't mean it is, a given that you are going to develop eczema. But I did want to mention that because, the kids that I see with eczema will often, nearly always, have one parent that either had eczema or still suffers with eczema. So yes, genetics have a big part to play, but it doesn't make it inevitable that your child will experience eczema just because you or your partner have. So I wanted to really delve into some of the modern diet and lifestyle contributors of eczema, because eczema is a multifactorial condition. It's not as simple as saying this thing causes eczema, this food causes eczema, or this lifestyle habit causes eczema. There's a lot of different factors that are involved in eczema, so it can make it fairly complex. And eczema is also, I think it's worth saying, also known as the first condition in what is known as the allergy triad. So eczema is often the first sort of sign that a child will be an allergy type child. So eczema is one of that allergy triad, and then food allergies or environmental allergies is another part of that triad, and then asthma often follow those who suffer with eczema. And I've seen lots of really young bubs, develop eczema, and it's that sort of that red light that this potentially is going to be a child that's going to have allergies and asthma. But again, if we can address these driving factors as soon as possible, then it's not inevitable that these other conditions are going to develop. But allergies and eczema nearly always go hand in hand. So let's have a look at some of the diet and lifestyle factors that are thought to play a part when it comes to eczema. And these also are contributing factors to allergies and asthma, those atopic conditions. So the first one that I want to talk about is the way that our babies are born and fed. Now, I do just want to preface this by saying that, this is not meant to make anyone feel guilty or, no judgment or anything here. But the way that our babies are born and fed can really have a big impact on their gut microbiome, which we've talked about the gut microbiome on the podcast before, but it's basically the health of a baby's gut. So when babies are born through the birth canal via a vaginal delivery, they're exposed to mum's healthy bacteria, which then enters the baby's system and colonizes in their gut. And then if they are breastfed with breast milk, then that promotes the colonization of the infant's gut with bifidobacteria and lactobacilli, which are really important and necessary for the development of normal oral tolerance to food. When babies are born via C-section and or they are formula fed, we know from the research that they are more likely to develop allergies, eczema and asthma. And it's thought, that the main contributor of this is because they've missed out on that exposure to healthy bacteria from the birth canal or from breast milk. Now, of course, if your baby is or has been born via C-section, or they haven't been able to receive breast milk for whatever reason that is, there are definitely things that we can do to, ensure that they do have the exposure to more healthy bacteria. But the way our babies are born and fed does have an influence on atopic conditions. So it's really worth sort of saying that here. So if you're thinking, well, I've got a child with eczema who is now 6 or 8 or 4 or 2, and they were born via C-section, or, I wasn't able to or didn't choose to breastfeed, then it's still not too late. We can do things to make up for that. And exposure to healthy microbes, healthy good bacteria through probiotic supplements and fermented foods are really important for all kids, but for kids that have been born via C-section or formula fed, it's even more important. So it's something that is important to understand. And we know, again, from the research that more and more babies are being born via C-section, and more babies are being formula fed for a whole host of different reasons. And it is impacting their immune system and their gut, which leads to a higher incidence of atopic conditions such as eczema. The next thing I want to talk about is the decline in nutrition for our kids. So our kids and ourselves, so the maternal nutrition comes into this as well. As a society, we're eating more processed, packet, refined food than we ever have before. And these foods are void of the vitamins and minerals that are needed to keep our kids' bodies healthy and functioning well. And, they can be lacking in really important nutrients and these deficiencies can lead to impaired immune and gut development, which increases inflammation, and it can lead to sort of gut issues and immune issues. And also, a lot of kids with eczema do have nutrient deficiencies. Skin integrity, to have nice, strong, robust skin integrity, requires nutrients such as vitamin A and vitamin D and omega-3. And if these are lacking in a kid's diet, or as I said, in mum's diet, for little babies, then that has an impact and can be a contributor as well. Another point I want to talk about here is the hygiene hypothesis. Now, I've done a podcast episode all about the hygiene hypothesis, and that is episode 6 of the Natural Super Kids podcast. We delved into the hygiene hypothesis. So if you're interested in learning more about this, definitely have a listen to that episode. And then the following episode 7, which is called A Simple Way to Improve Your Kids' Gut and Immune Health, delves into some really interesting research that kind of, involves the hygiene hypothesis. So the hygiene hypothesis basically says that a lack of exposure to microbes in early life does negatively impact our kids' immune systems and their gut health as well. And when you think about it, especially over the last couple of years with everything that's going on with the pandemic, but even before that, we have this real obsession with hygiene in the Western world. And by thinking about hygiene, we think that we're doing the right thing by keeping the germs away, the dangerous germs away from our family. But in fact, there's a negative side to that as well. So our kids need regular exposure to different microbes, a variety of microbes, for healthy immune and gut development. So when we are getting rid of all the germs by using things like hand sanitizers and antibiotics and antibacterials, and even processes such as pasteurization and pesticides and herbicides and antifungals, all these things that are designed to kill the dangerous microbes, our kids are getting less exposure to these. And it is thought to be one of the biggest contributors to allergies and atopic conditions. And I really love what Dr. Maya Shatreet Klein says about this. She's got a great book called The Dirt Cure. I'd highly recommend you grab a copy and have a read of that. But the way that she talks about this is that our immune cells are social and seem to have a quota for the number of organisms that they want to meet and greet every day. And without a stream of diverse microbes to identify, they become paranoid and target what does come through every day, like food. So, she's basically saying that because we're not exposing our kids to these diverse microbes, we're getting rid of them from our environment, our immune cells they get a bit bored. They start to target the things that are coming through every day and our kids are eating every day. So that's where, things like food allergies and intolerances can really develop. And so, these things are all really important to consider when it comes to the development of eczema as well. One other thing I did want to talk about briefly is the use of antacids, medications for reflux in babies. So this is huge. These are prescribed a lot. It's quite scary, the stats on how many of these antacids are being prescribed for babies for reflux. And the use of antacid medications in babies has been shown to increase allergies in children, which makes sense when you think about it, because antacids are basically reducing the amount of stomach acid that is produced. And stomach acid is needed for the breakdown of proteins. And if we're reducing the stomach acid, then the proteins don't get broken down properly and they end up sort of moving through the gastrointestinal tract and not being broken down properly. So when the immune system comes across these undigested proteins, it sets off an immune response, which can instigate an allergic reaction. And so there have been links shown in the research that link antacid use in pregnancy and in babies with increased allergies and asthma and eczema in children as well. So all of these things are playing a part. So I think it's really important for us to be aware of some of these contributors to eczema. And I really, I just see so many families suffering with eczema, which is why I put together my eczema workshop, which I'm really excited. I talked about that at the start of the podcast. So during this eczema workshop, you will learn my 5-step approach and also be able to implement this 5-step approach to treating eczema. And I just want to run through those 5 steps with you now so you can get a bit of a feel for, really what's involved and what this workshop covers. So the first one is gut support. Always gut support first, including some really interesting information about the microbiome and how kids with eczema have been shown in the research to have different microbiomes than kids without eczema. So it is an important part of the picture, and the gut is where a lot of inflammation sort of develops from. Gut issues. So addressing that inflammation at the cause is really important. So that's the first step that we talk about in the workshop. The second step is really implementing an anti-inflammatory diet. So reducing inflammatory foods and increasing anti-inflammatory foods is really important for addressing eczema in kids as well. The third step is identifying and addressing both dietary and environmental triggers. So nearly all kids with eczema will have an allergy or an intolerance or a sensitivity to some sort of food that they're eating or something within their environment. So it's really important to identify what those things might be for your child and then, address those triggers as well. The fourth step in my 5-step approach is improving allergy tolerance. So we don't just want to remove food triggers from the diet or environmental triggers from the diet, which can be really hard long term. We also want to be at the same time improving that allergy tolerance, which comes back to rebalancing the immune system and really improving that gut health. That's how we improve allergic tolerance. And so we want our kids to be tolerant. We don't want them to be reacting to everything that they're putting in their body. So that's an important part of the picture as well. And then the fifth step is nourishing the skin, both from an external point of view and from an internal approach as well. So making sure the skin has got making sure the body's got all of the right nutrients that it needs for healthy skin barrier integrity. So important when it comes to eczema. So I hope that's given you some insight into some of those contributing factors when it comes to eczema. And I encourage you, if you are challenged with eczema in your family in any way, to head on over to naturalsuperkids.com /eczema so you can find the workshop. We have an early bird special where you can save $20 up until the 22nd and including the 22nd of October. So go and check it out now. And if you're listening to this after that date, then the workshop is still great value. You get some really great bonuses. So definitely go and check it out. Okay. And we will be continuing this discussion in next week's podcast as well, really diving into some of the gut contributors when it comes to eczema and how eczema and the gut are so closely linked. It's always the place that I start when I'm working with families with eczema. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. Head on over to our website, naturalsuperkids.com, for the show notes for this episode, as well as a whole heap of inspiration to help you raise healthy and happy kids. I'll see you next week.